Hello everyone, welcome to another quick tutorial, this time talking to you about Dynamo and creating a between function inside the software, specifically using design script. So personally I find myself needing to extract values between a lower and a higher amount quite often, so I've just got into the habit of doing this through design script. There are, I'm sure, a number of different ways that you could go about doing this. You could even do a greater than feeding into a less than node and things like that, but I find that accomplishing both those tasks inside of one node is quite helpful, and the syntax is quite easy to do as well. So let's get started. Okay, I'm here in Revit at the moment, which I'm going to be using as my example. I have a series of ducts, and I have gone and I've just adjusted the width values for all of these ducts to anywhere between 300 and I think 1100 or something like that. Just very randomly got those values. And my goal in this is to find all of the ducts that have a width value of between 450 and 1000. So that's going to be my example. So I'm going to go through to Dynamo, and the first thing that I obviously want to do is collect all of my ducts. So I'm going to go to my Revit, selection, all elements of category and categories. Right, and I'm going to start by obviously selecting the duct category from the list here, plugging that in, and I'm going to leave my execution to automatic for now because I'm not dealing with a lot of data. Okay, and I want to get a parameter from these ducts, and the parameter that I would like to get is going to be the width. So I'm going to do a get parameter value by name node, plug my elements in, and again, value that I want to extract here is going to be the width. So I'm just going to type that into a code block, and there are all of my widths. Okay, so remember, my goal is to extract the values here that are between 450 and 1000. So this part is quite straightforward, and then we can move on to the code block and the syntax. And again, this is something that I use quite often, so I find it personally very helpful, and I hope you do too. So I'm just going to double click to create my code block first of all. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable, or a container that I can basically store all of this information inside this block, and I want to run some tasks on that. So I'm just going to call this variable, in this case, the input. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it widths, heights, whatever it is that you're trying to extract. So I'm going to start writing my function. So I'm going to say my input is going to be greater than or equal to 450. And because I'm trying to find the values between two values, I'm doing an AND statement, because I'm saying I want to find values between 450 and 1000. So my AND is represented by two AND symbols like this. And then I'm going to move on to my higher amount. So when my input is greater than or equal to 450 and the input, so I need to repeat that variable, is, let's say, less than or equal to 1000. Okay, so you can see my sort of constraints being written here. When my values are greater than equal to 450 or less than equal to 1000, okay, I'm going to put a space and I'm going to drop a question mark, which is basically querying that. And then the values that I want are going to be true or false values. So I can say true, colon, false. Okay, remember colon stands for otherwise. So I want you to query all of the items in this list over here, and I want you to find the ones that are between 450 and 1000. The ones that are between that, I want you to set to true. Otherwise, if they're not between that, I want you to set them to false. Okay, that's basically what the syntax is reading. So now you'll notice that I have an input variable over here that I can plug in. So I'm going to take all of my widths, plug it into the input, have a look at the information that gets produced, and I can see I have a series of true or false values. Okay, so that is basically your between function. So what you would do from now, I'm going to show you a variation of this quickly. So I remember my goal is to get the ducts that are between those values. So what I could do now is I could obviously drop in my filter node very easily, and I could just get all of the ducts between those two values here coming out of my in, right? And then obviously the ones that are not stored in my out. Now, I could eliminate this step if I wanted to here in the code block. So I can sort of incorporate this into this area over here. So if I go ahead and delete this filter, and I also backtrack true and false. I'm not looking for true and false values in this case. This time what I'm going to say is that Again, same thing. I want you to query all of the elements, and I want you to find out if the widths are between 450 and 1000. Okay, and if they are, I want you to return the element. Okay, otherwise I want you to just return a null value. Okay, and now I've created a new variable over there, so you'll notice that I actually have an additional input available to me. Now I could go back to my all elements of category, and I could just plug all of my ducks straight into here. And now I get all of the ducks that are true, basically. So you see, this is kind of like the filter. Everything that's true actually gives me the element from this list. Everything that's false gives me a null value. And then I could do something like, I could remove nulls, you know, like this clear list option over here. Plug that in, and then that just leaves me with a clean list with none of the null values. So that's an option that you could take as well. So you could either do the true or false value, kind of depends about what you're trying to evaluate and what your ultimate goal is. And then from here, you could obviously perform certain functions on these ducks. So for example, let's say I just wanted to override the color. I just wanted to quickly see all of the ducks in that view that are outside, or that are between those two ranges, sorry, 450 and 1000. So RGB, and I'll just make it full red, 255. Okay, plug that in, go back to Revit, and there are all of my ducks that are between 450 and 1000. And then I can obviously, so this is just helping me visually look at that information, and I could also just do something with those ducks if I wanted to, because I've now got them in their own list, which is quite nice. Okay, so that is all I wanted to very quickly talk to you about and show you. This is just something that I use a lot, those two variations, the true or false, or actually getting the elements and producing a list of nulls as well, depending on what your final goal is. I hope that this was simple and helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll be happy to help. And until next time, thanks very much for watching.